Hey guys, welcome back. I'm at the nature park. It's so beautiful today. It's warm, but the lake is still frozen. When I started walking, my soul leveled up like 20 notches. I was just like, come on, this is beautiful and awesome. Anyway, I want to come on here because it's been like a full circle understanding the past few days. It's been awesome. Whenever you have a full circle completion in life, the Lord, if you're receptive, the Lord will show you all of that because the chapter is closed, right? Or like that's finished, and He'll show you all of that so you can absorb it, right? And like understand that. It's like an award earned, right? 2 days ago, I was driving home. My daughter had just moved out, and I was driving home from her apartment 2 days ago, and I started feeling really not, I mean, I was sad. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never, she's been with me since she was a baby. So the Lord was showing me full circle of me raising her and then her moving out, you know? It was so interesting. He was showing me all of the decisions I made as a good parent and for her well being. And he was showing me all the tests that I, came upon and what my decision was and how that affected me as a parent. It was the coolest thing. So, he was showing me all the things I did that made her turn out to be a smart, compassionate, beautiful, independent girl. Like, it made me so proud. Like, I cried for like 2 days about it. Like, happiness, joy, just proud, you know? But he was showing me the tests that people are given in life about specific things. And there was a test that he brought up, and it was right after my spouse had passed away. I just didn't know how to cope. I didn't want to feel that because I felt inside something wasn't right. I just didn't know how to cope with that. So the Lord was showing me something, a test that He had given me, and that I had passed it. He was showing me what it was. It was probably like a year. My spouse had passed away, and I just didn't know how to cope. So I would get home from work, and I parked in my garage, and I would sit in my car and drink like 3 beers a day, okay, and cry. So no one could hear me. I would be in my car. And I was never a drinker, maybe socially if that, but that was just something I did because I didn't want the feelings to come up of what it was going to be. I knew it was going to really hurt, and I was trying to avoid it. I thought I could just get over the whole thing. No. That was just my way of like pushing the feelings down or just crying. I don't know. Okay. That's just what I was doing. I was doing that for like a year. And one night, I was sitting in my car in the garage, and my daughter had opened the door and asked if she could go to a friend's house if I could drive her. And I wasn't able to. I wasn't drunk, but I had drank 2 beers, and I'm like, oh, I can't drive. So after she shut the door, she got a ride and she had left. But the Lord basically was telling me that night, like it was like something came through and said, if an emergency occurs, you're not going to be able to, take action as you should if you're coping in this way. And it was really weird. It was like sometimes you can ignore things you get, but that was so profound in my soul, what he like told me, that it like really hurt because it was getting me to look back into my life. I grew up with a parent that drank, and like the same thing happened, and it like just mirrored that. It literally was breaking my heart. So that was it. I didn't drink anymore or sit in my car after that day. Okay. I knew that the Lord was basically telling me, you need to start feeling the feelings and go through it. It's been a year and you're doing this. So I did. I quit. I quit doing that. I wasn't addicted. I just didn't want the feelings to come forward. So I quit doing that. And a week later, at like 2 in the morning, I had to drive my daughter to the emergency room. You see, that was a test. He was testing me. Am I going to listen to what he's telling me? Because he knew an emergency was going to occur, and he was warning me of that. If you keep doing this, you won't be able to properly act if there is an emergency. And what do you know? There was an emergency a week later at 2 a.m. you know. He was showing me the test he gave me that I passed it. It's just so profound, you know. It's like, at the time, you don't even see it as a test. You're just listening like, yeah, you're right, I probably should cope with my grief and stuff. But it was just like all the stuff. He was showing me all these tests in life. Just being a parent, a young parent, not knowing, but just listening. It's like all the times I listened to that little guidance that I got, like that night. And when I was driving home from the hospital, you know, my daughter had to stay in the hospital for a few days. I was driving home from the hospital to get some clothes for her or something, and I just started crying my eyes out because he reminded me of what he had told me a week before, that I needed to quit doing that as a coping mechanism in case an emergency happens. And look what it was. He was warning me that. The Lord is good. If you're receptive to listen, he tells you everything before it happens. You get warnings and nudges. And that is so key because, you know, I don't even want to think what could have happened, but I just think that's why I listen. It's because of that right there, that stuff. It's always happened in my life and I've always listened. But the more you listen, right, you know, you level up, there's new devils, right? It gets a little bit difficult, but because you've mastered, you can overcome more difficult things, right? I could have taken the easy road and ignored it and say, oh no, this is how I'm going to cope, right? I could have done that. But it was resonating so deeply what he showed me that, like, if an emergency happened, I couldn't do anything, that I quit that night. I was like, that's it. And I'm so grateful that I listened to him because he already knew I was going to need to take action in the middle of the night, you know? Life tests you all the time. And it's whether or not you listen to those nudges if you pass the test. You know, these past few days, the Lord was just showing me all the things I did as a parent to always do the right thing for my daughter, you know, because if I don't, who will, right? Yeah, so it took about 2 days to fully, like, absorb and process that full circle that was completed, you know? So just be receptive, right? That's what I'm saying. If you know, you don't have to have a strong relationship with the Lord. It's not just that. It's the universe that tests you, right? It's life that tests you. When I was in that situation, that was a test for me, right? What am I going to do with the information? Because the outcome was so different than what it could have been. If I just continued to cope in that manner, who knows if I ever would have grieved properly and got through it. But what really struck my heart was God showed me that if I did not heal from grief, she would have never healed. So, full circle. Yeah, sorry, I had to pause it. Somebody was calling me. But, yeah, I don't know. You know, just pay attention to life because the world distracts us. They distract us with all these other things so that when you are receiving something, you ignore it. I could have ignored that, but I get stuff like that all the time in life where I just, you know what I should do, or I know I have to make a decision because I'm in tune to getting those things, okay? So if you're not, just start paying attention. If you're distracted all the time, you'll never be able to receive any information. So you have to allow yourself. Now, I think because I'm just receptive, it just always comes through. I don't think I could block it if I tried, you know? But I'm trying to just explain how it works sometimes. Like, it, you know? So it took years to heal. But the past 2 days have just been like me absorbing the full circle of all of that. Me being a young mom up until the day she moved out. And I was really proud of it. I did everything I could. And no matter what, like, I always did the right thing to benefit her. Because she relied on me. And I was the only one there for her. So it's like, I had to do the right thing. I could have chose wrong in several situations, but why? All of those right decisions added up to the young, beautiful, independent little person she is, and me being like so proud of like just everything that's occurred up until this point, you know. I woke up this morning and the 2 days of like absorbing the full circle of me raising her ended. I was like, oh, I finally like took it in and absorbed it for what it was, and it was just so beautiful. I was like, man, that's why it's warm today, I'm telling you what. But you know, even though when they're adults, they still need you, you know. Of course, I said, hey man, you moved out, but you may see me more now that you don't live at home. So, you know, just connect, you know. You are more than the world tells you that you are, you know. We are highly conscious beings. You know, the more lessons you learn, the higher your conscious, you know, your conscious level raises. And it's almost like a baseline. When you reach a level, that's your baseline, you know. When you reach a level, that's your baseline. You're never going to go back down to the bottom, right? So just keep elevating yourself. Listen to, you know, messages. Be able to receive stuff, right? Like, just be able to recognize like something that is telling you maybe to do something different, or like, hey, you need to change this, you know. It just made me so happy to see all of the decisions I made when I was younger raising her. All those great things I did added up to this, you know. So proud mama, for sure. So I love you guys. Tap in, tune in, and, you know, listen to the Lord. Just be receptive to listening, right? If you've got a million things going on in your brain and people are like stressing you out and bringing you down, it may be difficult to get any messages, right? You have to eliminate that stuff. Otherwise, you won't be able to do it. When someone's brain is full of a bunch of things, they don't have room for God, you know? You have to make room for God. If you have no room, you won't receive anything. You know what I mean? Just keep that in mind. So, I love you guys. Have a good day.